I started working the night shift at the mall because I needed money, not because I liked the quiet. Most people say the mall at night is peacefulempty.com still, but they've never been alone in one. They've never walked through echoing corridors where their own footsteps sound like someone following them. They've never stared into storefront windows that reflect more than just their face. I had been a night guard for about a month. The job was simple. Walk the mall every hour. Check the doors. Watch the cameras. Don't sleep. Don't steal. Don't die of boredom. That was until the night I found the store that wasn't supposed to be there. It started like any other shift. I arrived at 10 p.m., signed in, grabbed my flashlight, and checked the cameras. Everything was normal, boring, dead quiet. At 1:03 a.m., I started my usual patrol. I walked the east wing, past the food court, then looped back toward the older part of the mall where half the stores were abandoned or under renovation. That's when I saw it. At the end of a hallway that should have been a dead end, there was a light. A store I'd never seen before. It had a red neon sign that just said, "Open." No name, no branding, just that glowing word, pulsing like a heartbeat. I froze. There wasn't supposed to be a store there. I stared at the glowing red sign for a long time. There was something wrong with it, even though it looked simple enough. Just the word "open" in blocky, red neon letters. The way it flickered didn't feel random. It almost had a rhythm, like a heartbeat. I stood frozen in place, trying to remember if this hallway had ever been anything but a dead end. I'd worked overnights at the mall for nearly a month now. I knew every corner, every light fixture, every broken tile. This hallway never had a store. I took a slow step forward, then another. The store seemed to grow clearer the closer I got. It didn't make sense. The hallway had always ended at a blank wall and a rusted emergency exit door sealed shut with a chain. Out of code, forgotten by time, but now there was a glass storefront. The windows were fogged up from the inside, covered in a greasy mist like someone had breathed on them for hours. Behind the condensation, I saw shadowy outlines of shelves, a glass counter, and old items that looked like they belonged in a pawn shop from a different century. I pulled out my walkie-talkie. Control to base. You copy. Just static. The East Wing always had terrible signal, but tonight the static felt thicker, like something was pressing down on the airwaves. I tapped the side of the radio, but it didn't matter. I was alone. Here, I walked up to the glass. My reflection stared back at me, distorted, stretched. Behind me, the mall hallway looked darker in the glass than it did in real life. Something moved in the corner of the store. Just a flicker, a shape, gone in an instant. I looked down at the doorknob. Old brass, curved, definitely not modern. The kind of door you'd find on an antique shop or a long-closed cafe. The open sign flickered faster now, like it was getting excited. I knew what I should do. Walk away. Note it in my log. Tell the manager in the morning and let someone else deal with it. But that door, that glowing red sign, that impossible hallway, I felt like it had been put here just for me. I touched the door. It was cold, not room temperature, cold. It felt like something that had been sitting in a freezer for hours. I turned the handle and pushed. A slow, low bell chimed from inside. Not a friendly ding-ding. It was deeper, slower, like the sound you'd hear in an old church during a funeral, or the start of a warning. The smell hit me first. Dust, mothballs, mold, old paper and candle wax. Something metallic, like dried blood on coins. The store was dimly lit by overhead lights that buzzed faintly, casting soft, yellow halos that didn't quite reach the corners of the room. Shadows hung like curtains. There was no one inside, at least, not that I could see, but there was music playing, soft, scratchy, coming from somewhere in the back. It sounded like an old record spinning, playing something classical, maybe a waltz, the kind of thing you'd hear echoing through an empty ballroom after the party ended decades ago. I took one step in. The floor creaked like wood, even though the mall had tile. The air felt heavy, like it had been locked in here for years, waiting. For me, I looked behind me. The door was closed. I didn't remember closing it. I reached for the handle, but it wouldn't turn. Then the music stopped. Just like that. Total silence. I turned back to the store and noticed something new. There was a mannequin standing by the glass counter. I swear it hadn't been there before. It wore a black suit, too formal, too old-fashioned. Its head was turned slightly facing me. No face, no features, but I felt it watching. I took a step backward, heart pounding, and then, from behind the counter, a voice, looking for something special. Looking for something special. The voice didn't match the place. It was soft, smooth, almost polite, like a hotel concierge greeting a guest. But in the quiet, dusty shop, it felt wrong, like it came from somewhere deeper than the throat, somewhere colder than lungs. I froze. There was no one behind the counter. Just that mannequin in the suit. Standing too still, my eyes scanned the shop. Shelves on the left were filled with strange toys, wooden dolls with sewn-shut eyes, music boxes with no handles, stuffed animals with teeth instead of button eyes. To the right, bookshelves crammed with leather-bound tomes. No titles on the spines. Some looked hand-stitched. One was dripping something black. The air pressed tighter around me. I stepped closer to the counter. The mannequin didn't move, but I swear, its head had turned slightly more toward me. The voice came again. Every customer finds what they're looking for, even if they don't know they're looking. It echoed strangely, like it was being spoken through water. I swallowed hard. Who's there? Silence. I took another step forward, and then the lights flickered. For one split second, the store changed. Not dramatically, just enough. The mannequin was now behind the counter. Its head was tilted downward, as if reading something. There was a book open on the glass. I stepped closer, hands shaking. I didn't want to see what was in the book, but I couldn't stop myself. It was a log, a record of names, hundreds of them, written in the same neat, inked handwriting. Each one had a date and time next to it. The times were always late at night, between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock a.m. My eyes ran down the list, and then I saw it. My name, written in black ink, next to it. Tonight's date, time, 1:47 a.m. The exact time it was now. I staggered backward. The mannequin looked up. Its face was still blank, but somehow I could feel it smiling. Then the bell above the door chimed again. Someone else had entered the store, but when I turned around, the door was still shut. I was no longer alone. The bell above the door chimed again. I spun around, heart hammering, but the door hadn't opened. No one stood there. The street-facing glass was still fogged over, showing only blurry shadows, and that pulsing red open sign. The same eerie glow now stained the shop's walls in dull crimson. I swallowed, trying to breathe. "Hello?" I said, barely more than a whisper. Silence. Then I noticed something strange, something even worse than being watched. The air had changed. When I first entered the store, the air had been stale, dusty, cold, but now it felt warmer, not comforting warm. Breath in your neck, warm, like something alive had entered, something that shouldn't breathe at all. I took a step back, toward the counter, where the mannequin still stood motionless. The logbook lay open in front of it. My name burned into the page like a warning. The ink looked fresh, still wet. I reached for it with trembling fingers. My name was smeared now, as if someone had run a finger across it. Beneath it was another name. Not handwritten, it looked scratched in, almost carved. The letters were jagged and sharp, like they had been etched into the page with something blunt and angry. J. Mercer. I didn't know that name. But the moment I read it, a low sound filled the store. Breathing, not mine. Ragged, deep, close. My eyes darted to the back of the store, where a black curtain hung behind a shelf of broken clocks. The fabric swayed gently, like someone had just passed through it. The breathing grew louder, slower, heavier than I saw it. A shape, behind the curtain. Huge, almost hunchbacked. Just a silhouette, but it moved, like it was crawling. Limbs too long, arms bent the wrong way. A dragging sound followed behind it, like nails across old carpet. I backed away slowly, hands shaking. The lights flickered again, and suddenly the curtain was still. No shape, no breathing, nothing. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, and turned back toward the counter to check if the mannequin had moved. Again, it had. Now it was holding something. A box. A small, black velvet box, like the kind you'd see in a jewelry store. It sat in the mannequin's hands, as if it had always been there. I leaned in. There was no lock, no label, just a tiny seam along the lid. I didn't want to open it. Every part of me screamed, "Don't," but my hand moved on its own. Trembling, slow. I lifted the lid. Inside was a single tooth. Old, yellow human. My stomach turned. I dropped the box on the counter and stepped back again. My legs hit something behind me. I turned. There was a mirror standing where the bookshelf used to be. Full length, gold frame, covered in cracks, like it had been hit with a hammer, but refused to shatter completely. I stared at my reflection, except it wasn't a reflection. Not really. I was standing still. But in the mirror, I was smiling, and the thing behind me, the one I couldn't see, was grinning too. Its face was bone pale. Its eyes were nothing but deep, black sockets, and its hands long, twisted fingers were reaching out, almost touching my shoulders. I spun around. Nothing. I looked back at the mirror. The reflection was now normal. Empty room. No figure. No smile. Just me shaking, pale, terrified. I backed away, heart racing, and nearly tripped over a pile of old books on the floor. They hadn't been there a moment ago. I knelt down, trying to steady myself, and picked up one of the books to push it aside. The cover was blank, but when I opened it, my breath caught. It was my journal, word for word, thought for thought, pages of memories, confessions I'd never told anyone, thoughts I'd had years ago, regrets, dreams, shame, written in my handwriting. Except I'd never written them. I flipped ahead. The entries kept going, into tomorrow, next week, next month. Then I found the final page. One sentence. I never left the store. I dropped the book and stumbled to my feet, ready to run, ready to bash the glass if I had to, but the moment I looked toward the front of the shop, the door was gone. There was no glass wall, no entrance, no red sign, just shelves and shelves stretching endlessly into a shadowed hallway that hadn't been there before. I ran anyway, down the aisle, past mannequins that now lined the shelves, dressed in security uniforms that looked exactly like mine. Some of them had my name tag. I turned left, then right, blindly moving through the maze of shelves. The deeper I went, the louder the music became again. That slow, warbling waltz, it sounded like it was coming from everywhere now, like it was built into the walls, into my head. I slammed into something hard. Another counter. The mannequin was there again. Same black suit, same position, same empty face, and in front of it was a small bell. A card sat beside it. Ring for service. I stood there, staring, breathing, hard, sweating. I looked back. The hallway I'd just come from was gone. Only the counter, only the mannequin, only the bell, and the horrible, quiet understanding that, if I didn't ring it, I'd never leave. My hand moved slowly. I raised my finger, and just before I touched the bell, it rang by itself. The bell rang on its own. A single, sharp ding that echoed far too long. It wasn't a normal sound. It rang like it had fallen from the sky, like it had been waiting to be heard for centuries. I took a step back, heart punching against my ribs. The mannequin hadn't moved, but something had changed. The lights overhead dimmed, casting everything into a yellowed gloom. The air turned heavy again, like I was standing underwater. Even breathing felt like a chore. Then I noticed a small card next to the bell. The words had changed. Before, it read, "Ring for service." Now, it said, "One wish, one price." The mannequin slowly raised one hand. It creaked like old wood. The arm lifted, stiffly but deliberately, until it pointed toward a hallway that hadn't existed a moment ago. I didn't want to follow it, but something in me did. Or maybe something inside me had already made the choice. I followed the direction it pointed, into the dim corridor. The floorboards groaned beneath my boots. The walls pulsed with faint movement, as if breathing with Muir against me. The hallway twisted and narrowed. The air grew colder. I passed rooms. Some had open doors. Some slammed shut as I neared. Each one seemed to contain a scene, like I was walking past other people's lives, frozen in horrible moments in one room. A girl sat on the floor with her back to me, brushing her hair in a mirror. The mirror showed her smiling, but I could see her actual face. She was sobbing violently, shoulders trembling. In another, a man in a suit stood at a podium reading from a book. The pews in front of him were full of mannequins. One of them was turning its head toward me. Slowly, I kept moving, feeling like if I stopped for even a second, the hall would close behind me and trap me there forever. Eventually, the corridor opened into a larger room. At the center of the room was a table. On the table sat a mirror, oval-shaped, golden frame. Beside it, a stool and a card that said, "Know thy face, know thy fate." I didn't sit at first. I circled the table, inspecting the edges of the mirror. I half expected to see wires, some projector, anything to explain this. Nothing, just gold, just stillness. But the mirror didn't reflect the room. It was black, like a screen before it turned on. I hesitated for a long time before I finally sat down on the stool and leaned in. That's when the mirror flickered. Not like a light, like a TV. Static first, then images, and then I saw myself. Not me exactly, but another version of me. He sat in the same chair, in the same clothes, but his eyes were hollow, skin pale, stretched tight across his skull. His mouth moved, but no sound came. I stared, and then his eyes darted up, meeting mine through the glass. He slammed both fists on the table and mouthed something. "Don't listen to them." The mirror cracked, just a single line down the center, Dan. For a moment nothing, until the room shifted. Not physically. I wasn't sure how to describe it, but it felt like everything tilted, like gravity changed, like the walls had moved a few inches while I blinked. Behind me, a voice whispered, "Do you see now?" I stood so fast, the stool tipped and clattered across the floor. I turned, no one there, only shelves, more shelves, floor to ceiling, and every one of them was filled with boxers, all black, all velvet, like the one from earlier with the tooth. I didn't want to open any of them, but I couldn't help it. My hands moved on their own. I picked up the nearest box. No label. I opened it. Inside was a photo, a black and white picture of a man in a hospital bed. His face was blurry, but something about him felt familiar. In the background, there were shadows shaped like people, but their faces were twisted, stretched like melted wax. Another box. I opened it. A single baby shoe, burnt. Third box. A wedding ring. Bent, covered in something dry and red. Fourth box. A pair of eyes. I dropped it the moment it hit the ground. Every box in the room shuddered. I ran. I didn't know where the door was anymore, but I couldn't stay. I pushed past shelves, knocking things over, tripping on rugs that hadn't been there a second ago. The music began again, the same slow waltz, except now it was in reverse, warped. The walls were closing in. Shelves leaned in toward me like trees in a storm. Books fell like dead birds. Boxes slid off and popped open, revealing teeth, bones, old letters with names scratched out. I finally found a curtain, heavy, velvet. I pushed through and came face to face with the mannequin again, back at the front counter. Only this time, it had a face. It was mine. Its eyes blinked, its mouth opened, and it spoke in my exact voice. "You wished to leave. That was your price." My heart dropped into my stomach. I turned to run, but the moment I did, the room stretched, like a rubber band being pulled. The floor peeled away beneath me, the shelves exploded outward, and suddenly was falling into the mirror. When I woke up, I was lying on a bench, back in the mall, the normal mall, fluorescent lights above me, escalators humming in the distance. It was morning. People were walking past me like nothing had happened. Shoppers, janitors, security. One of them, Paul, the guard from the next shift, stopped when he saw me. "You good, man? Thought you went home hours ago." I sat up slowly. My throat was dry. My heart wouldn't slow down. "Where's the antique store?" I asked. "In the East Wing." He frowned. "Antique store? That whole hallway's still boarded up? Man, hasn't been used in years." I stood and ran to the East Wing, just as he said. Nothing. Dead end, dust, old tile. No sign of a door, no glass, no glowing red sign, but taped to the wall was a single black velvet box. No label, no explanation, just sitting there, waiting. The velvet box on the wall didn't have a label. It was just there, taped up like a note someone had forgotten, or maybe someone had wanted me to find it. That idea was worse. I didn't want to touch it, but I also couldn't walk away. I looked around the hallway just in case someone was watching, but the East Wing was empty, dead silent, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I peeled the box off the wall. It was exactly like the others, black velvet, soft, a little dusty, the kind of box meant to hold something important or something dangerous. I opened it slowly. Inside was a key, old, rusted, brass. A small tag was tied to the handle with twine. The tag read, "Storage level B3. I blinked. That didn't make sense. Our mall only had 2 basement levels, B1 and B2. B3 wasn't even on the building's blueprints. I knew because I'd checked the schematics once, out of boredom during a night shift. But I also knew the key wasn't a joke. This was the mall, and now I understood it didn't follow the same rules during the night. I pocketed the key and left the hallway quickly. I didn't want to stay there too long. I half expected something to whisper my name again, or that bell to ring out of nowhere. But nothing happened. Not yet. The next night, I didn't clock in like usual. I didn't even wear my uniform. Instead, I waited until the mall closed and snuck back inside through the loading dock entrance. I knew wasn't alarmed. It was risky. But the fear bubbling in my chest wasn't about getting caught. It was about finding B3. The freight elevator in the back hallway only had buttons for B1 and B2, but with the key in hand, I stepped inside and just stood there for a moment. Then, on a hunch, I slid the key into the lock panel near the emergency stop switch. There was a soft click, and to my shock, a third button lit up. B3, no label. Just that soft red glow. My finger hovered above it. I thought about going home, about forgetting everything, but I pressed it anyway. The elevator groaned, and then it began to descend, lower than B1, lower than B2, past where the blueprints should have ended. The light above the door flickered as we went down, the kind of flicker you get from a dying bulb. I couldn't even tell how far down we were going. It felt like minutes then. Ding dot. The doors opened, and I stepped into something else. It didn't look like any part of the mall I knew. The hallway was lined with tile, but it was old, outdated, cracked, and yellowed, like it hadn't been touched in decades. The lights buzzed faintly above, casting a sickly greenish glow. To my right, the walls were covered in mirrors, all shapes and sizes, all cracked, some just fogged over, like they were breathing. None showed a reflection. To my left were doors, old wooden ones, mismatched. Each one had a number, but they weren't in order. 114, 089, 312. Some were scratched out. One door had a blood-red handprint on it. I walked slow, trying to stay calm. Behind one door, I heard something scratching. Behind another, I heard crying. Soft, muffled, like someone begging. I kept going. Eventually, I found a sign, painted directly onto the tile wall in messy black strokes. No return beyond this point. It wasn't a joke. My legs were shaking, but still I walked. Then I saw it, the store. The same one from before. That glowing red, open sign flickered behind the glass. It was here, below the mall. I approached the door carefully, expecting it to vanish or slam shut like a trap, but it didn't. It opened for me, and the bell rang. This time the store looked different. The counters were still there, the mannequins still stood, but everything looked aged, deteriorated. The wallpaper was peeling. The shelves were dusty, like no one had entered in years. And yet, the mannequin was there. But now, instead of wearing my security uniform, it wore something worse. My face, not a mask, not plastic. My face, same features, same tired eyes, same slight scar on my chin from falling off a bike as a kid. I staggered back. The mannequin raised its hand. In it was a book. I didn't want to read it, but I walked forward anyway. It placed the book on the counter and opened to the first page. It wasn't blank. It was filled with dates and notes like a journal, but not mine. Each entry ended with a name and the words, "Wish granted, price paid." I flipped pages, more names, more entries, until I found the last one. My name, Ethan Rowe, entered 3:13 a.m. Wish pending. Pending. That's when it hit me. The store wasn't just a weird haunted place. It was a deal. You came in, you asked for something, maybe even by accident, and the store gave it to you. But it always asked for something in return, something you didn't expect to give. My hand brushed over the words, "Wish pending," and the mannequin moved again. It slid the book toward me, then pointed to the empty line beneath my name, waiting for me to finish it. I backed away. "No," I whispered. "I don't want anything. I didn't make a deal." The mannequin's mouth opened, and it said in my voice, "You wished to know. Now you know." That was the price. The lights flickered violently. The store screamed, not with sound, with memory. The shelves around me burst open, and boxes spilled everywhere. Each one opened on its own, revealing flashes of memories, none of them mine. A man standing over a grave, a woman staring into a mirror that never showed her face, a boy trapped inside a closet, crying as something scratched from the inside, then dash me on the floor. In my uniform, dead eyes. The mannequin leaned forward and whispered, "All stories end here, unless you write a new one." It pushed a pen toward me, and for some reason, I took it. The pen felt too heavy for something so small. It was bone white, not plastic, not metal bone, smooth, carved, and cold. The tip was red, not ink red, blood red, fresh. I didn't want to hold it, but I did. Something about the way the mannequin stared at me, my own face, my own eyes, made it impossible to look away. It didn't blink, it didn't breathe, but I could feel its expectation, waiting behind me. The store groaned like a living thing. Wood creaked, lights flickered. The waltz music had returned, only this time it was slower, dragging like a broken record. Time didn't feel real anymore. I looked down at the book. The page was still open. Ethan Rowe entered, 3:13 a.m., wish pending below it, an empty space. The line waited, wide and patient, waiting for me to finish the story. What did I wish for? I hadn't asked for anything. I didn't come here wanting love, or revenge, or money. I didn't say anything out loud, not the first time, not the second. But then I remembered, I just want to understand. I'd said it, whispered it in my mind when I first saw the store, when I found the tooth. When I stared into the mirror and saw my reflection looking back with hollow eyes, I didn't say it like a wish. But the store had taken it. That way it always did. You didn't need to make a deal here. You just needed to need something badly enough. I stared at the page again. My fingers twitched, and I wrote. I wanted to understand what this place was, what it does, why it chose me. The ink bled into the paper like a wound. The mannequin stepped back, its arms lowered, and for the first time, it smiled, but not kindly, not like me. It was the kind of smile you'd see on a corpse that had just remembered it, was still hungry. The lights went out. Everything plunged into black, and then I heard footsteps, not just one set, dozens, marching toward me, slow and steady, like something rehearsed. I turned in the dark, trying to find the source. I held the pen like a weapon, even though I knew it wouldn't help. Shapes began to emerge, figures. They were stepping out from between the shelves, from behind the curtains, from mirrors that hadn't been there a second ago. They weren't mannequins, they were people, or they had been, once. Some still had human eyes, others had blank faces. Some were stitched together, different pieces like dolls made from memories. I recognized a few of them not personally, but from the book, the names, the prices. They'd made wishes too, and now they were part of the inventory. They circled around me, not moving fast, just enough to block every way out. The mannequin that wore my face stood behind the counter still, motionless, arms at its sides. That's when one of the figures stepped forward. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s, pale, hair, long and stringy, like it hadn't been washed in months. She didn't blink. Her lips moved without sound, but in my head, I heard her speak. You know now. You asked to see. So you've seen. Her head tilted. Her neck cracked unnaturally to the side, and she let out a long, gurgling breath. Now, you must choose. I backed away, nearly slipping on something soft. I looked down. Boxers, the velvet ones. All of them scattered across the floor again, opened. Some were empty. Some were full. One had a small bird skull inside. One had a tongue. One had a set of baby teeth, wrapped in a lock of black hair. I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. Choose what? The woman didn't answer. Instead, the lights above flashed. The book on the counter closed on its own. The mannequin stepped to the side and revealed a door behind the counter. One I hadn't seen before. On it, written in red chalk, final inventory, staff only. My head pounded. The figures around me moved as one, parting down the middle like theater curtains, clearing a path toward that door. This was it, the end, or maybe the real beginning. I stepped through the door, and the store vanished. Behind me, no bell, no music. Just black, and then a long hallway. But this one was different from the others. Clean, sterile, bright white walls, humming lights. It felt like a hospital, a place of order, except it wasn't. The walls breathed. I could see the paint, pulsing. I walked. Footsteps echoed louder than they should have. The hallway stretched the longer I walked, like it didn't want me to reach the end. But I did, eventually, and what I found was impossible. A mirror, floor to ceiling, framed in the same gold as before. But this time, it wasn't cracked. It showed. a room. And me. But not the me I expected. This version of myself stood behind the counter of the antique store, like a clerk, taking items from people, odd things, wedding rings, baby shoes, hospital bracelets. Words whispered into his ear. He smiled politely, took the items, wrote names in the book, and one by one, the people disappeared, vanished like they'd never existed. I was running the store. I stumbled back from the mirror. "No," I whispered. "That's not me. That's not what I want." But the hallway responded. The lights above me flared, and a voice spoke from behind the glass. My voice. "It's already what you are." The mirror rippled like water, and the hand of my reflection reached through it. It grabbed my wrist, hard, pulled. The world twisted, like being flushed, down a drain made of light and static. When I opened my eyes, I was behind the counter, back in the store. But this time, I wasn't me. I was watching from inside the mannequin. My arms couldn't move on their own. My face was fixed, and yet I was aware. I could feel everything. Someone stood in front of me, a man. He looked scared. His voice trembled as he said, "I just want to forget." The bell above the door rang once, and I watched, helpless, as my arm moved on its own. Reaching for the book. I don't know how long I've been here. The store doesn't obey time. Sometimes I see people I remember from my life. Sometimes I see children come in with objects they shouldn't be carrying. Rings, bones, URNS. Sometimes no one comes for days or years. Sometimes the shelves change. Sometimes the mirrors show me what's happening upstairs in the mall. I watch the people walk by, laugh, eat, shop. Live, and I wait for another person to wander in, for another wish to be whispered, for another price to be paid. Because that's the rule. That's the deal. The store doesn't take people. It offers it, waits for you to come in, willingly, curious, afraid, greedy, desperate, and then it offers you exactly what you think you need. The rest is inventory. I woke up standing behind the counter again, not sleeping, not dreaming, just suddenly aware. The lights above flickered gently, as they always did, casting long shadows across the shelves. But today, something felt different. The store, HUMMED. Alive IA. Looked down and saw the black book still lying there, closed this time. Its leather cover was warm, like skin left out in the sun. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew the next name would write itself. When the next customer came through, that's how it worked now. I was part of it, but some small part of me, some sliver hiding in the back of my mind still screamed to wake up, to run, to fight. That part had no power. I was no longer the man who wandered into this place by accident. I was the clerk. The moment I accepted the pen, the moment I wrote in the book, I stopped being just Ethan. I became a function, a moving part of a machine older than I could ever imagine. And still, the door opened, just like that. No bell, no creak, no sound of keys or locks turning. It just opened, and he walked in. He didn't look unusual at first. Tall, maybe mid-40s, dressed like someone going to a casual dinner, button-up shirt, dark jeans, neat hair. But the moment he stepped into the store, everything behind him disappeared. I mean, everything. The mall, the hall, the world gone, replaced by thick black mist. And when I looked down, he had no shadow. I blinked twice, still nothing. He approached slowly. His footsteps made no sound, even though the wooden floor usually creaked with the weight of a breath. He stopped in front of me, smiled politely, and placed something on the counter, a mirror shard. I didn't recognize it at first, but the moment I touched it, my head exploded with memories. My reflection, the mannequin, the hand dragging me through the glass. This was a piece of that mirror. The tall man leaned forward. "You've been watching, haven't you?" he asked. His voice wasn't deep or threatening. It was calm, casual, like a teacher asking a student to pay attention. I nodded, though I wasn't sure why. I didn't feel in control of the nod. He smiled again. Good. Then you already know why I'm here. I didn't, but I also did. He wasn't here to make a deal. He was here to test something, or someone. Inventories changed, he said softly, glancing around. You've done well. He walked over to the shelves and gently touched a velvet box. Then another dot. Each one opened at his touch. Some hissed. One giggled. He didn't flinch. You've managed to keep the place alive, he said. Most clerks don't last past their first season. He turned and looked at me, and suddenly I could. See it? His eyes? They weren't eyes at all. They were tiny doors, thousands of them, layered like shutters in an old camera lens, always shifting. I couldn't stop looking. You're not like the others, I whispered, my voice cracking. He nodded once. I'm not. Then, what are you? He didn't answer at first. He walked back to the counter and gently pushed the mirror shard toward me. Look, I didn't want to, but my hands moved on their own. I tilted the shard just right and stared into the reflection and saw myself. Only it wasn't me behind the counter anymore. It was a younger version of me, clean face, hopeful eyes, wearing the security uniform from when I first got hired. He stood outside the store, knocking on the gate, but the mall was empty, dark, abandoned. He kept knocking, and inside the reflection, ether current, me watched silently, without moving. From behind the glass, the man with no shadow leaned close. You're split, he said softly. The part of you that chose to understand, and the part of you that still doesn't. I stared harder at the reflection, outside the store. The younger version of me pulled something from his pocket. A photo of my mom, I gasped. He was still trying to find her. Even now, even after everything, even after I'd given up. I forgot why I came here, I said. I forgot what started all this. The man smiled again, but this time it was sad. That's how the store keeps you, he said. It gives you answers. It never said they'd be true. He turned and walked toward the back. But before disappearing through the curtain, he looked over his shoulder. You're not lost, Ethan? Not yet. And then he was gone. I stared at the shard for a long time, and for the first time since I became the clerk, I thought about leaving. Could I? Was it possible? The mirror had pulled me in. But if there was a way in, maybe there was a way out. But what would happen to the store? What would happen to the book? I looked down. It had opened again. A new name was written in it. Riley Thomas entered. 4:44 a.m. Wish pending, and a girl stood at the threshold of the store. Small, maybe 12, pale skin, messy red hair, one sock up, one sock down. She held a plastic lunchbox in her hands. I stared at her, frozen. She looked around, confused, then stepped inside. She came up to the counter and placed the lunchbox in front of me. Her eyes were full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. I just want my brother back, she said. My heart cracked. A child. The store had no mercy. None. It didn't care how young you were, how innocent. If your need was deep enough, if your pain was loud enough it heard you, it answered. Always. I looked at the lunchbox.ode, faded stickers on the side. I opened it slowly. Inside was a bracelet made from colored beads. Letters spelled out, Riley plus Max. I stared at the book. Her name was still there, blank, under wish, waiting. I could stop this. I could warn her, send her away, tell her it wasn't worth it. That no matter how badly she wanted him back, the store would take more than it gave. But my hand moved on its own. The bone pen touched the page. I wrote, Riley Thomas wishes to bring her brother Max back. The lights dimmed, the walls groaned, and the store began to change. The girl didn't scream. She didn't cry. She smiled, as if she'd just won a prize. Behind her, a figure stepped out of the mist. A boy, thin, hollow dash. His clothes looked wrong, faded, torn in places, but his face. It was him. Max, she cried. She ran to him, hugged him, but he didn't move. He didn't speak. He only stared at me, over her shoulder, and smiled. A dead smile. The kind I saw in the mirror. The kind I wore when they left the store. Hand in hand. The book closed itself. I looked down. Her name was no longer under wish pending. It was under paid in full. And beside it, in tiny red letters, inventory acquired. Childhood to 11 years. I fell to my knees. I wanted to scream, but clerks don't. Scream. We catalog, we observe, we process, we pay. The store was still, humming, and the mist behind the door swirled. Slowly another customer would come soon. They always did. And I would be ready. Because this was my job now, and the store does not let you leave. Not unless someone else takes your place. Not unless you wish it. I didn't open the store that night. It opened me. The walls didn't creak when I arrived. The lights didn't flicker. Everything was still. Too still. Like the moment before an earthquake. When the air holds its breath. I walked to the counter. Slowly. The book was already open. No names, no list. Just one line written in the middle of the page. Inventory check required. The ink was dark red. I didn't want to know if it was blood. My hands were trembling as I picked up the bone pen. Just to feel something solid. Something real. But even that felt wrong to warm, like it had just been used by someone else. Then the door behind me creaked open, but I hadn't heard it shut, and no bell rang. I turned around fast. Nothing, just shadows. But one of those shadows didn't move like the rest. It stepped forward. A man, tall, thin, pale. He wore the same black apron I did, only older, faded, dusty. His hands were calloused, fingers stained red. His name tag had rusted into a blur, but his face was mine. Only older, tired, hollow. I thought I was free, he said. I thought you took my place. I don't understand, I whispered. He smiled, not kindly. You will. He walked past me, toward the counter, and placed a torn photograph on it. It showed them all. The store, its gate half closed, and two people standing inside it. One was definitely me, but the other, I leaned closer. The face was scratched out. Who is that? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked over to the shelf where the velvet boxers were kept and pulled one open. I had never touched that box before. I didn't even know what was inside. But when he lifted the lid, I saw a flickering old cassette tape, black, unlabeled. The moment it was exposed, the lights in the store dimmed to orange, and the faint sound of a woman crying filled the room. He walked back and placed the cassette on the counter. You want to know how to leave, he said. Start here. He stepped backward into the dark until he vanished completely. I didn't see him go. He just became part of the shadows again, and the cassette began to turn all by itself. I found a dusty old player beneath the counter. I hadn't noticed it before, but it had always been there, covered in cobwebs, ticking softly, like a sleeping heart. I slid the tape in and pressed play. The voice that came through was warped, but familiar. My mother, she was whispering. I told you not to follow me, Ethan. You should have stayed home. Her voice broke. They promised I could leave, but they lied. Just like they lied to me when I first came here. Just like they'll lie to you. Silence then, static, and another voice, not hers. The store's a low, slow growl, like rust grinding against bone. She wanted to know, it said. So we showed her. Now she belongs to the archive. My blood ran cold. I stopped the tape, but it kept playing. The store wouldn't let me stop. The lights dimmed again, and the shelves began to rearrange. Literally, They moved on their own, scraping across the floor, reshaping the layout of the store. A door appeared in the back wall, one I had never seen before, or maybe it had always been there. Waiting, the tape finally stopped spinning, and I heard a final whisper. You want answers? Step through. I didn't hesitate. I walked to the new door and pulled it open. Cold air poured out. It smelled like wet paper and burned glue. A narrow stairwell spiraled down into darkness. I followed it. Every step groaned beneath me. Each wall was lined with torn pages and old receipts, fluttering like moth wings. Words whispered from them as I passed. He's not real. Your inventory. The book writes you too. My breath came in short gasps, half from fear, half from truth. I reached the bottom and found a wide underground room filled with mirrors, all different shapes and sizes. Some cracked, some covered, some wrapped in chains, and in the center of the room, a chair with restraints, and a clerk's apron draped over the back. The old version of me stood next to it, waiting. You remember now, he said softly. You were the first. I shook my head. That's not possible. I came here looking for my mom. You think that was the first time, but it wasn't. He stepped closer. You're part of the store. You've always been. The story you remember is the one it gave you. I backed away. Why would it do that? Because it needs you. It needs a keeper, a guardian, a face. And every time you break, it rewrites you. He pulled a sheet off one of the mirrors. It didn't show me. It showed him, a different him, laughing, holding hands with a young woman, my mother. You were born here, he said. The mirror changed now. It showed her pregnant inside the store. Another change. She was being pulled into the back, screaming. Another, a newborn placed on the counter, crying. You were its first trade, he said. My knees gave out. I hit the floor hard, sobbing. No, the store took your mother, he said, and gave her you. Silence. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. He helped me up. Look again. I turned to the mirror. This time it showed a memory I did recognize. The day I found the store, only I didn't walk in. I was dragged in, by myself, by a clerk, by him. He looked terrified, guilty, but he didn't stop it. He just handed me the bone pin and stepped into the mirror, to hide, to reset, to rest, until the store called him back. Until I called him back. I'm sorry, he said. I tried to forget. But you're strong, stronger than me. You're the only one who ever asked questions. He stepped into the light. For the first time, I saw the scars on his arms, names carved into them, wishes, trades he had written in, the book with his own body. He walked to the chair and sat down. I can't keep going, he said. You have to. I wanted to scream, to run, to destroy everything. But the mirrors were humming now. The book was writing on its own, and my reflection stepped out from one of the panes. Younger Hole, holding the black book. It walked up to me, placed the book in my hands, and said, one more trade. I looked down. One line was written on the page. Clerk requests release. I looked up at him. Do I sign? He nodded and smiled, tired but peaceful. I signed the line. The lights above us burst all at once. The mirrors cracked, and the old clerk let out a breath, his final one, as the shadows wrapped around him and pulled him through the floor. He was gone, and I was alone, holding the book, wearing the apron. But something had changed. I could remember now, all of it. Every version of myself, every trade, every lie. The store hadn't rewritten me this time. It had let me wake up, because now I knew what it wanted, and I would give it something it never expected. They say when you stare into the abyss, it eventually stares back. I had stared too long, and now the abyss had my face. The store is quiet now, not the peaceful kind of quiet you get in a library, or when snow falls late at night. No, this is the quiet death. feels aware, like it's listening, like it's watching you read this right now. The moment I signed that book made the final trade. The store didn't just accept me, it became me, and I became it. At first, I thought I'd won, that I had outsmarted it somehow, freed myself by accepting the truth. But the store never wanted to be escaped. It wanted to be understood, owned, fed, and now I understand everything. There are rules. There are always rules. You don't find the store, it finds you. When you're broken, desperate, searching for something you don't even know how to name. When your life reaches the edge of something, fanola loss, a truth, a lie too heavy to carry, it shows up. It waits until your soul rattles just enough to open its door. But once you step inside, you're part of the inventory. Forever. I thought it would feel like a trap. Instead, it feels like waking up from a dream. I know what's behind every shelf now, every velvet box, every tape, every cursed object tucked into back rooms with no doors, and aisles that shift when no one's looking. I know the language of the books that rewrite themselves. I know the symbols etched into the ceiling above the false skylight. I know the sound the mall makes at 3:33 a.m. when everything outside the store is frozen and only the shadows keep moving. And I know what's coming, because the store has started growing. It used to be one space, one hidden room behind a mall. Now it's bleeding outward, faster every night. At first, I thought the cracks in the food court floor were normal cheap tiles, poor maintenance. But then, I saw the words, leaking through the grout, tiny letters. Black ink. Names. Dates. Requests. Some were crossed out violently. Others glowed faintly when the mall lights went dark. Then the directory map changed. Where it once listed Unit 23 vacant, it now read 238 trades, and where's no one seemed to notice. Even the janitor Mike, who always nodded at me, just swept past, like nothing had shifted. But I knew the store had added a second entrance. Now I see the signs everywhere, not just in the mall. Billboards with flickering letters at night, crumpled receipts tucked into library books, YouTube ads that play for a fraction of a second and show a storefront with no name, a voice on the radio whispering a location only once. You won't remember it, but your bones will. The store is calling. New customers. I'm the clerk now, but I'm not going to keep the cycle going like the others did. I'm not going to trap the next version of myself in this endless loop. I'm going to burn it down, or at least, I'll try. Because here's the worst truth of all. The store is alive. It has always been. It was born in the silence between prayers. It grew in the empty spaces where forgotten things go. It feeds on bargains, lies, guilt, hope. It doesn't care if you believe in it. It only cares that you want something badly enough to walk through its door. You can't kill something like that. You can only starve it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm changing the terms. When people show up now, I ask different questions. Instead of offering them what they want, I show them what they've already lost. The woman who begged for her son back saw the child's reflection in every mirror, but none of them looked at her. The man who wanted to forget his sins left weeping, unable to remember his own name. They don't come back. The store doesn't like it. It's punishing me. The lights go out more often now. The walls bleed ink. The air buzzes with voices I don't recognize. And sometimes I see the old clerks watching me, reflections in places there shouldn't be any. Their mouths don't move, but I can hear them. You can't stop the tide. Maybe not, but I can build a dam. One night at a time. I've started writing my own book, not with bone pens, not in blood, with ink, with truth. I hide the pages in random spots throughout the mall, taped under tables, folded into jeans pockets, inserted into shopping bags. Each one tells part of the story. My story, the store's story, your story. Because if you've read this far, you've already heard the call. Maybe you've seen the strange gate in the back of a mall near you. Maybe You've had dreams about stores that aren't there in the morning. Maybe you found a receipt in your jacket pocket for something you never bought. Maybe the book has already started writing your name. If that's true, run. Not because you'll escape, but because you still have time not to answer. The next time you hear the bell ring, final note. Sometimes I think I hear my mother's voice in the shelves. Sometimes I think I see her in the back hallway, watching me work. She doesn't speak anymore, but she smiles. And when I look closely, her apron has been removed. Her hands are clean. Maybe that means I finally kept the promise I made as a kid. Maybe that means I saved her. Maybe that means I can save myself, too. Or maybe it's just another illusion the store feeds me to keep me compliant. Either way, tonight, I'm still here, behind the counter. The store is closed now, but tomorrow night it will open again, and the door may appear for you next time. So, if you ever see a strange little shop at the end of a mall hallway, don't go in. And if you do, don't sign anything.